This is Wendy Halley, and you're listening to Lucid Cafe. Welcome to the final episode of Season 3. And what a season it's been. I almost feel kind of selfish because I get to use having a podcast as an excuse for having these amazing conversations with fascinating guests, experts in their fields about all kinds of cutting-edge topics and ideas, and then I get to share them with you. Today's episode is no exception. If you're a regular listener, you may have figured out that I'm a huge fan of accessible, down-to-earth approaches to healing, self-care, and spirituality. Well, my guest, Gina Caputo, fits that mold perfectly. She's a wildly popular yoga instructor who's the creator and host of the online community, the Yoga Potluck. She's also an ACE-certified health coach and behavior change specialist. And she's a cool human being. I feel really fortunate to have had the chance to chat with her about her work and her approach to helping others transcend conditioned consciousness. Please enjoy my conversation with Gina Caputo. Gina, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, I'm psyched. So, what's this yoga thing everyone's talking about?
So, yeah, yoga. What is it?
Well, what is it? What is this?
How much time do you have? Yoga is a practice. I'm sure many of your listeners are somewhat aware of what it's all about, but it's a practice of transcending conditioned consciousness, and I use that definition with you here because I think it's the definition that's not commonly used, but is, in my opinion anyway, the most accurate. When we started practicing yoga, and here I mean like us in the West, it started out rather esoteric. You go back in time to where people were having some awakenings about like, hey, what's life all about? And I like to think, I don't know this to be true, but I like to think that when we were a more agricultural culture, people just like didn't have time to ponder such questions. But you had people like Thoreau is someone I think about who spent time in the woods pondering. And then as we shifted into a more industrial culture, it, I guess, freed up time for people to begin to ponder things. And yoga got popular a long time ago. But if we were talking about what is often called the modern postural yoga movement, that was going back to, I think, like the 90s. Some would say before that, where it really started to get popular. And it was presented largely as a kind of like a fitness regimen plus, where it promised more than aerobics did because there was this sort of mysterious impact on your psyche, that it would somehow magically make you calmer and happier. And that's not necessarily untrue, but you can do a lot of stretching and not get any happier. So it's like, I always like to say, it depends. It depends. Who's your teacher? What are you doing? What's the emphasis? But if you go way back into India, it is a practice that really had nothing to do with physical stretching for a long time. And it had much more to do with things like meditation was one of the main practices, service of others. That's called karma yoga. That was another one. And a devotion to God, bhakti yoga. It wasn't until much later that we started using our bodies as a way to support the practice of transcending conditioned consciousness. And that's really like the limitations of, the ego where you and I do things like we identify with, my name's Gina Caputo and I'm a health coach, or I'm a yoga teacher and I am Jeff's wife and I think that's who I am. And yoga and many other traditions, like let's say Buddhism, suggest that that is absolutely not true, and those are impermanent things that change throughout your life, and that ultimately clinging to them causes suffering. So yoga practices, all of them, from the stretching to the breath work to the meditation to the mantra to visualizations, like all of them, the popular ones and the not so popular ones, really are different ways to transcend the limitations of the consciousness that us mere mortals are dealing with all day, every day. How do I get past that? How do I end my suffering?
Way to take the ball and run with it. Because that 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 question, I was just being a smartass, but man,
I do my best.
oh, I'm wicked impressed. That was great. I was like, wow, she's really going to answer this question.
You bet I am.
Yeah, hell yeah. And it was a brilliant answer.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks.
So how did you find your way to the yoga path?
Uh, Through the channel that I think most people in this era did. I actually I want to make my answer sound way sexier and cooler. There is some truth to the sexy and cool version, which is when I got into that period of our lives when you're a teenager where you just turn into an a-hole and you reject your parents, and in my case at least, and I think for many of us, we reject kind of the dominant narrative of the time. I happened across Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, and I'd love to say I started being a yogi from that moment forward, but I will say that was my first, like, kablam, like frying pan to the face sort of moment of, oh wow, so our identity isn't fixed and maybe we should be seeking, and blah blah blah. I don't know if you've read it, but oh, I had all kinds of big teenage questions, but those went dormant once I started to get deep in the throes of conditioned consciousness, and wanted to figure out who I was as related to the work I was doing, my job, all that. But my work is relevant. So my husband and I started a web development company in the 90s. So it was kind of before it was something your grandma could do. And we were working at our computers all day, every day. We were pretending we had 10 people that worked for our company, and it was just the two of us and our three dogs, and it was a lot of work, and my body, I'm in my 20s and my body started to feel like I was in my 80s. So I sought out this thing that was getting cooler, which was yoga, and it was powerful. Like, I didn't know what was happening, and I'm not sure that my teacher knew how to unpack that for all of us, but it was enough mystery to hook me. And so I started practicing it every day, just at my local gym. And one thing led to another, and I had the opportunity to begin teaching. And mostly it was because I was there every day and they needed a sub really badly one day. And once I sat in front of that room and had the privilege of guiding people through that powerful, albeit mysterious experience, I felt like it was something I wanted to do. And then I just sought every nugget of education I could possibly find at the time, and then have continued to grow and evolve and seek, for me, the most practical applications of the teaching. So it's something that you feel like you can put to work in your life, not just escape to for an hour, if you know what I mean.
I would love to learn more about what you mean by that.
Yeah. So now looking back, like in hindsight, it's clear that the commerce that surrounds yoga now, and has since it got popular in the 90s, really pushes it for its like saleability. So if you say, oh, yoga is a place to de-stress and relax and get calm and get toned, people are going to say, yeah, yeah, I want those things. But if you think about it, it almost suggests that those things they happen when you're in that experience, like at the studio. That's cool. I think that's great. And I did that for many years. When I say practical, it's this idea of how does your practice, that 1 hour or whatever it is that you spend engaging in those things, how does that show up in the other, 23 hours of the day? How does it show up in your relationships? Like, how do you connect the dots between doing a forward bend and not fighting with my husband, let's just say? So when I say practical, it's really about like, okay, well, is the stretching helping? Like, is the extensibility of my hamstrings the reason why I don't react when he loads the dishwasher incorrectly? um, no, it's not the extensibility of my hamstrings. It's more than that. And so when I say practical, it's really where I like to focus in like, okay, what's actually happening beyond the fibers in your legs extending and contracting?
Can you go into a little bit more of what is actually happening from your perspective? What is going on
Sure,
beyond the
sure.
stretching of your hamstring?
Well, first, I want to say that I think that everyone has a right to their own experience. So I'm going to speak in general terms, and this may or may not resonate for some people, but this is what I believe is. I think that this is possible. If it isn't happening, I think it's possible. So when you contort your body in ways that are unusual, what's usual for us? You and I both right now, we're both sitting in a chair of some kind, gesticulating with your hands and moving your head a little and maybe typing or something like that, right? That's a lot of our days. And so when we go into a yoga class and all of a sudden you're doing some back bend or you're standing on one foot or you're doing a deep forward bend or, one that I love is you're doing a giant twist. We don't do a lot of twisting in like typical jobs. So you go and you do these unusual or outside the norm movements and to do them in a way that supports the structure of your body, the function of your joints, that's just deep enough for you. You've got to be paying attention. You've got to be focused. You've got to be aware. And in my humble opinion, it's all about that awareness. So if I were going to use the dishwasher example, it's a silly thing, but I picked it because maybe some of us can relate to it. Is I pull open the dishwasher and it's loaded in a way that almost seems like he's mocking me.
Huh.
Like
I
I
wonder where you got
can't,
this example from. Okay.
but it's like I can't even imagine what would make you want to load it that way. That's what I'm talking about, right? And feeling, let's say a reaction arises, and I can say with certainty that the hours upon hours I've spent focusing on just the right amount of forward bend or working skillfully with the amount of sensation or to make sure I'm breathing as I move or that I'm breathing in sync, perfectly in sync with my movement. The hours and hours I've spent doing that trains up my awareness. So I'm standing at the dishwasher, I pull the drawer out, I look down at it, a reaction arises, which is essentially WTF, dude. And I might, previous period of my life, yell that out or say, GD, why don't you ever do this like I showed you? Or whatever. Now I'm making stuff up. But instead of that, I become aware of, for me, an eruption arising. I become aware of these feelings, which is different from just having them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's almost in psychology, this is called like the onboard observer, or in Buddhism, it's like the inner witness, right? So it's like I'm having the feeling, and I'm also witnessing that I'm having a feeling. And from that witness layer, where I've used all of the awareness I've been cultivating on the mat, I make a decision. Is this like the worst possible thing, that the dishwasher is loaded in a weird way? You know what I mean? It gives you this pause. The awareness that comes from yoga gives me a pause so I don't blow up over something that really is trivial. And that's also why I picked that example. Trivial, you know? And so you witness it arise and you go, erupting, at least that's the language I use, is I kind of identify, oh, like Mount Vesuvius here. And then I can make a choice, like either let it blow, and sometimes you need to, or let it go, and often you need to. So that's my answer.
All right, no, that's a good example. Basically, you're talking about increasing awareness so that you can exercise where your control really lies, which is internally around your reactions, your responses to things. And
Absolutely.
so
Yep.
you're saying that by having this focused practice on your physiology, your breathing, your movement, that doing that with discipline
Mm-hmm.
translates in your everyday life.
Beautiful summary that you just made. Yes.
Why, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Perfect.
I could see why that would be appealing. We are in the Western world, we are not very internally focused.
True. True. We like to be distracted.
Mm,
Yeah. We're stressed and we're tired. That stress exhausts us. We're super stressed. This is something I'm kind of low key obsessing about right now, is this: why do we not want to like take the best care possible of ourselves? And it's weird because we do. If I asked you, do you want to take the best care possible of yourself? You'd say yes. But then when it comes to actually doing it, why do we fail so often? And the answer is enormous and goes beyond the scope of our chat here. But one thing that keeps coming up for me is, because our stress is so poorly managed. This is all of us, you, me, all of us. Because our stress is so poorly managed, I think we're exhausted. We're exhausted to the degree that the idea of doing work that would benefit us, i.e., take care of yourself, is just not appealing. It's the first thing to
it's
go.
more work.
It's more work. And taking care of yourself is work. I wouldn't lie to anybody about that. To feed myself like the way I feed myself, it's a lot of work. To exercise the way I do, it's a lot of work. I have to discipline. You use the word discipline, which I love. I have to be disciplined and committed to myself. That takes work. It's effort, it's effort. But we're so stressed. I think that a lot of us think it's just one more thing. And, as a health coach, I also want to say, like, yeah, but it's kind of the thing. It is one more thing, but it's the thing, because your ability to do anything well, be support your community, your family, do good work, or whatever it is, all of that stems from the thing, which is self-care. But I think that's the what gets in the way. I think we're so stressed. And some of us might say, I'm not that stressed. I think it's become so normal. It's become like that we think that's not stress.
Right, right. I think you hit the nail on the head, is that we have no awareness of actually how much stress we're carrying in our bodies. I
Mm-hmm.
I think it's complicated, like you were alluding to. It's a complicated issue because I think a lot of what's leading to these unhealthy behaviors is it's all deeply unconscious, right? It's
Right.
because we're not focused internally. We don't have this awareness of ourselves. So so
Yeah.
we end up just doing the same shit over and over and over again, and
Yep. Yep.
and then getting maybe pissed about it or
Yes.
disgruntled or sad or I mean, I'm a big fan of saying that I think our symptoms are there to get our attention.
Right.
They're not about eliminating necessarily their information. They have stories in them. So
Yes.
what stories are my symptoms trying to relay to me so that I can gather that wisdom and then make different decisions about it? But I mean, if
Right.
I say to people that I work with, I'm like, if you took a quarter of the energy you're putting into your anxiety and you just
Hmm.
put it in the direction of a little bit of self-care,
Hmm.
you can still worry about shit, but just take a
Hmm.
quarter of it
Right.
and shift it in that direction.
Yeah.
Man, there'll be an opening,
Right.
that like little
Right.
threshold that you might see that you can cross over and see a whole different
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. I think that's spot on. You actually remind me when you say we aren't particularly self-aware. What did you say exactly? That we don't something about like internal, that we don't focus
Yeah, we're not
internally.
internally focused.
We're not internally focused. Yeah, that really connected for me because it goes back to this what is yoga. And I mentioned that how yoga got sold to people. It makes me sad because while flexibility and stretching are amazing and I think everyone should have them be a part of their lives, I think that selling it as such and teaching it as such, it ripped people off. It ripped people off of what they could do. But the truth is, it lies in what you said, a recognition that first and foremost, we are not internally focused. Why? Well, when you turn your focus inward, you're going to find some shit that you feel ashamed of, embarrassed of, regretful, sad, angry. You're going to find some stuff, right? You don't just turn around or turn inward, open up the trunk and look inside and it's like unicorns, butterflies, hummingbirds and rainbows.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit in there. And
Hmm.
I laugh because something that's common in yoga is this idea of good vibes only. And that's not yoga. Yoga was saying get internally focused and have the stamina and resilience to work with what you find in there. And so I always joke like if we marketed yoga for what it actually is, this ability to transcend conditioned consciousness, and it is required that you turn inward, like you said, if we sold that honestly, we'd say, come to my studio and let's suffer just the right amount together today for us to grow and be able to, like you said, apply some wisdom to make different choices.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, let's suffer together. But that's more like what it is, but it's also beautiful to do that in community where you make realizations and you feel hopefully safe, supported, held. And sometimes that just comes from knowing that the people on either side of you are going through the same shit too, maybe just a different flavor of it.
Yeah, I really think it's important too how you frame it,
Mhm.
that process, because we're all in it. And I
Yeah.
mean, being on planet Earth is part of it is about suffering, sometimes a large part of it.
Right.
So, I have the shamanic lens, which listeners are probably sick of hearing about by now, but I'll repeat it again. This idea that these shadowy aspects of ourselves that you're referring to, that you open this door up to these parts of yourself that you may not be quite fond of,
Mm.
these unsavory aspects,
Yeah.
and we all have them, that it's about making friends with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, because they have information for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can take your fear out for a beer and get to know your fear. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but it's kind of cool that it did. Then it's like, all right, what's, like I was saying before, what story does my fear have
Mhm.
to share with me? Because it's there for a reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, it does that even make it suffering then? if you start looking at it from that perspective, it's understanding that, am I my own worst enemy? Right? Am
Right.
I the source of my suffering, which is, I think, at the core of a lot of the Buddhist philosophy. I am by no means fluent in Buddhist philosophy, but I'm just putting that out there as a disclaimer. But
Nice.
you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I wouldn't call myself an absolute expert. I think that it's there's a lot to it. But what I liked about the way that you just described it is how practical it is. If you can't tell, I'm into practical spirituality. But you said reduce, and yes, a main thrust is definitely like the elimination of suffering. But the reason I really love the word reduce is because that sounds like something you can be working on. Sometimes when your goal is so lofty, and this goes for trying to lose weight, build muscle, change your diet, or eradicate suffering, whatever it is, if the goal is too lofty, too huge, you're just so likely to feel defeated, and then a failure, and then give up, and then go right back to your suffering in the case of your example. Um, and so the idea of using a word, because I think words matter, but using a word like reduce then makes it like, okay, in this moment, am I reducing my suffering? Am I contributing to the reduction of my suffering? Yes, good. I've succeeded. High five, you know?
Yeah.
So I like that a lot. And to your point, that is it really suffering then once you understand that it's the path to liberation from suffering, or the transcendence of this consciousness, conditioned consciousness that causes our suffering. uh you think, oh well, it's maybe it doesn't feel good right now, but ultimately I'm on my way, I'm going in that direction, and that feels exciting for some of us. And what I'm the kind of person that I'm just like carpe diem, bring it now, give me all of it. And I have learned that I think it's because I trust in my capacity, that my capacity expands. And so far I've been fortunate enough to not have anything happen. I've had some shitty things happen, but I haven't found the thing yet that I can't find workable. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that when you are also in that boat, it's easy to forget that not everyone has the same challenges, the same threshold, the same resources. And so, yeah, for many people, I think it does feel like not only suffering, but a scary, unsafe place, depending on the inner resources, outer resources, and what they have available. And then for some, it's a little bit of like, just push through and it will feel less like suffering. And for others, it feels like that hurts so good kind of thing, like bring it. So I've had to really work on being more understanding and more sensitive to the huge like spectrum we're all on when it comes to finding suffering workable. It's going to be different for everyone.
Well said. And one of the things that really stood out from what you said was the word trust.
Mm.
I think that is key, really, if you
Mm-hmm.
think about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you trust, then you're going to have forward momentum.
Mm-hmm.
I love to ask the question, how do you know when you can trust?
Yeah. I think some of it is your nature. I really do think some of it is your nature. Like if you were a little kid that charged at stuff without hesitation, you may have some kind of inherent trust. I'm kind of steering out of my own lane right now. Like, I don't know this. This is from experience, not education. But it's like if you charged at stuff as a kid, it may be that you just have more inherent trust. Like you're just naturally like, whatever happens, I'm here for it, good, bad, or ugly. I'm here for it. And then some of it is probably I'll say nature. It could be in the environment, how your environment impacted you. But the thing that popped into my head first when you asked that question is because you've had proof, meaning you've been through shit. You reflect that, like, I made it.
Exactly.
The more that happens, I think you develop a sense that, like, I've got this. It's not going to be pleasant. I don't want it to happen. I'm not going to be celebrating. And I've got it. I've got it.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it because it's direct experience, right? Because you've had
Mm-hmm.
enough proof, as you said, to
Mm-hmm.
demonstrate that you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find a way to get through this situation. Maybe you don't know how,
Right.
you don't know when, but you will.
Yeah.
You will find the strength, you'll find the resources, whatever, whether they're internal or
Yeah.
external resources, you'll figure it out.
Right.
And the more you bank those experiences in your psyche, then you have this kind of filing cabinet that you can
Right.
draw on, and you could say, well, I got through the shitstorm of 93, so
Right.
that tells me I'm going to be able to get through this too.
Right. Right. And it almost circles back to the self-care piece that we were talking about earlier. How do we have the stamina to accumulate, like you said, those experiences? How do we have the stamina to accumulate what we could call transcendental experiences? Experiences that were hard. We found the inner outer resources. We made it. We did it. We learned. We grew. We made something happen. How do we have the stamina, to keep facing those over and over again? And I don't want us to be glorifying some sort of death march through life approach, and instead say, I want to equally champion self care as being a part of that. It's not just that you made it. We keep using the word resources. Well, when a cup is empty, it's empty. And so, if we can agree that hard things are going to happen, I wish they didn't, but hard things are going to happen this day and every day forward. And maybe you'll have a string of days where no hard things happen. And I give you like a virtual high five for that. But if we could just agree, stop sugarcoating things and say hard things are going to happen, and that we will need to accumulate hard experiences that we transcend in order to develop trust and resilience in ourselves, trust in ourselves, and a sense of empowerment. Like, I can handle this. We must be taking care of ourselves. Otherwise, it is a death march. What sustains those hard periods has to be rooted in self-care, in my opinion. And that means caring for yourself on every level. It's not just taking an occasional bath. It's looking at all of the realms of health, from spiritual, physical, community, relational, all of it, nutritional, all of those. Look at all of those realms of health and ask yourself, how can I care for myself more? Because I know hard things are going to happen and I want to be ready for them, because I want to accumulate enough of those experiences so I feel empowered to face life. Not to mention, cool things are going to happen. And you want to be able to enjoy those as fully as you possibly can. And you can't if you're depleted, empty from stress, from lack of self care.
I will drink to that. On the self-care end of things, you have an online community that you created, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about it, but my sister-in-law, Terry, I believe is a,
Love Terry.
how can you not love Terry?
It's true. It's true.
So I believe she's a participant.
Yeah.
How did it come to be? What is it?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where you say, thanks, coronavirus, or thanks, COVID. So it's called the Yoga Potluck. And the work that I do right now is in two main realms. One is yoga, my longtime career in yoga, and the other is in health coaching, where I work with all of those realms of health and I encourage people and support people and try to facilitate healthier behaviors. A health coach is a behavior change specialist. If any of your listeners weren't aware of that, not like a personal trainer, that's wonderful too. This is specifically about behavior change. So those are the two big realms that I work in. And the community that you're talking about is centered in yoga, and it's called the Yoga Potluck. And the idea being like everybody brings something to the table. And they bring, their special sauce, and that's what makes communities
Sounds a
cool.
little gross.
Uh, does it?
Just kidding.
Well, I guess I like, so I'm a big fan of the band G Love and Special Sauce, and I think that must be where that comes from. But in any case, the Yoga Potluck is a community of folks that are from all over this country, but also, I'm proud to say, other countries too. And we get together a few times a month and we do different yoga practices. So we do a live physical practice, we do a live meditation, and we do a live what's called satsang. And that's a Sanskrit word that means gathering of true people. And I really love that definition because of the word true. And it's not separating humans into those that are true and those that are androids or whatever. But to me, that suggests they're people that are committed to truth. And truth is a part of seeking truth is questioning conditioned consciousness, probing, poking at it. So we get together for that live once a month. I record all these things too, so anyone that misses it can still watch it. But we get together live for those, and I also do on every Monday, I do a Mindful Monday vlog, which is really similar to those gatherings. The big difference is I'm the only one that talks in those vlogs. In the actual satsang, other people can talk too. But the point of it is for us to normalize the exploration of conditioned consciousness, and that's all of it, the whole spectrum of conditioned consciousness, and to normalize exploring our blind spots. And I use the teachings of yoga to sort of anchor the conversations. So I'll offer a little teaching and then we have a conversation about it. And the normalization of it is huge. And it gives people a chance to hear others having similar experiences, being very vulnerable about it. And in turn, they feel sometimes a sense of endearment, sometimes a sense of relief, sometimes a sense of empowerment. Like, oh, somehow it just makes you feel like you can handle it when you know other people are handling it too or are working with it too. And that's really special to me. The potluck is really special to me, and in particular, those sessions, because if you heard the things I was saying about yoga, modern postural yoga, it's the part I think we missed a bit. We didn't hit the mark. That the philosophy of yoga is so rich and dense too, but it's so rich and deep. And there was a lot more than this flexibility will mysteriously make you happier. It's like there's more than that. And there are other people that I'm sure do it more skillfully than I'm just a practical gal. But that's authentic to me. I like to look at, how does this show up in your day to day? And we get to talk about those things and share how it shows up, not just the highlight reel, but all of it. And it's precious. It's after 20 years of teaching, it is so rewarding to be in this. Anyway, I said thanks COVID, because uh, COVID forced it to happen. COVID birthed it. It's like you got to stay inside, and I can't teach at all the festivals and do all the other stuff I normally do. So how do we connect? And so it's like it just logically emerged, I think. And I'm so grateful because I might have just kept going like I was and missed the opportunity to have this type of connection with a community far and wide, much broader than just Boulder, for example.
That's cool. What a gift.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So is this something that is open to people
Oh,
to
yeah.
join at any time? It's not like a cohort.
No, no. Yeah, it's not a cohort and it's not a cult. That's what I thought you were gonna say. No,
Well, thanks for clearing
it's
that up because,
yeah, no, yeah, you got it.
that'd be rude
No,
to ask. So, is this a cult?
yeah. Oh, no, no.
I'm glad you cleared it up, though.
Yeah, you got it. Yes, of course. It's open to everyone. Something that I've recently learned is that I think folks have the idea that it's a bunch of super skilled yogis, whatever that is, and teachers and stuff, and operates at a very high level. And it's just like, these are folks, okay? These are folks. Yeah, there's some yoga teachers in there, but it's just like a bunch of folks having folks issues and joys, and you know what I mean. It's like there's nothing to be intimidated by, I don't think. In addition to the live sessions, though, I have a growing vast library of practices. I call them home practices, and I actually think that this is a really interesting time in history for us to, yes, practice yoga together once in a while, but to really bring your practice home. Meaning, I think it's a time for more intimacy with ourselves in our yoga practice. Because when you're in a studio, it's fun. It's fun. It's great. And teachers might support you or push you in ways that you enjoy, but you're always going to be distracted on some level because there's mirrors, there's music, there's people, there's someone sweating on you, there's the teacher coming around touching you. I'm not saying those are bad things. I think, in my opinion, that's a great, like, once in a while. But I just think, and this is just my opinion, I think it's a beautiful time to have the majority of your practice be something that you do at home, solo. There's just an intimacy in that that you can't, I'm not saying you can't get, I won't say that. It's hard to get in a big group class. You can move at the pace you want, you can wear what you want, you can pause when you want, but you're really noticing yourself quite a bit more. So that's just, like I said, been on my mind. So there's a lot of those home practices there that are available for people when we're not having a live session or the vlogs or anything like that.
I'm going to ask you to put your coach hat on for a second. How
Oh.
do you encourage people to do something that might, like an at-home yoga practice, that might seem really intimidating or overwhelming, or just I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the juice to
Mm-hmm.
do it
Mm-hmm.
or the discipline?
Mm-hmm.
How do you encourage people to go beyond that?
Yeah, the main thing, the thing that jumps to my mind immediately is you've got to explore your values. So someone that starts practicing yoga or swinging kettlebells or running or anything, or eating vegan, anything like that, that you do because you feel like you should, or you're supposed to, or people say it's good, that kind of thing. It's a 99.9% chance you're going to fail after a while. You're going to peter out. And that's not just my opinion, that's evidence shows that that is not a good motivator. So I leave that out. That's what I would not do, is say you should practice yoga, you should do this, you should be disciplined. What I would do is encourage people to identify what they value. And if, let's say, awareness played a role in any of those things, then I would suggest they experiment with a practice. And if I were their coach, I would help them find a practice that feels very accessible, that feels very doable. So I wouldn't dump them into some power vinyasa 90-minute thing, just like a little step, a little invitation as part of their experiment to see if this practice actually connects with their value of being more present in their lives, like being present with their children, being present with their partners, being present with their work. You know what I mean? So if someone said, I value being present and I really want these things, we might come up with the fact that yoga would be a good experiment. And then the trick is find something accessible. So if they're triggered to do it because they want to be present with, let's say, their kids, that's their trigger, then we find something that's accessible. The motivation tends to come more naturally because it feels like they can do it and they are very clear why they want to do it. And it isn't because they should.
I met this psychologist once who called those shoulds
Mm-hmm.
mustabations.
Ah, that's hilarious. Masturbation.
Mustabation.
That's great.
Yes.
I got to write that down. Yeah. Don't
Don't
masturbate.
mustabate.
Oh my God. Totally writing that down. If you masturbate too much, your hand grows fur
Yes.
or whatever
Yeah.
whatever that was.
Yeah.
What was it? You go blind. You go
Yes.
blind. Don't
Well, I think
masturbate
both.
too much because you go blind. Yeah.
If you go blind first, you won't see the fur on the palms of your hands. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I did I make that fur thing up? I think I might have.
I think hair.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
familiar. Hair,
Okay.
fur, it works.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
We don't have any fellows right here to ask, so I think another really important word you brought up too is experimentation. So framing it
Mm-hmm.
as an experiment because
Yeah.
it may not work.
Nope.
It may not be your thing, but why
Right.
not experiment and see if it works for you?
Yeah, maybe your thing is walking in the woods. Maybe, I love the idea of experimenting, and I wish that we were more comfortable with it so that you could, like a scientist, you could just sort of like, oh, that experiment was a flop. It just blew up and go, okay, what am I going to try next? Instead of like, oh, personalizing it and like, I'm a loser. I can't even do yoga. It's like, hey, use that energy to do the next experiment, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So are you actively taking on health coach clients?
Yes, right now I have my maximum number of folks I'm coaching, but what I always am taking are people that get on a list where we set up a discovery call where we figure out what is it that you're interested in doing, and or you can ask me questions about health coaching and would it be helpful for you? And I'm very not salesy. I'm very like I only really want to work for people that this is going to be good for anyway, so it works for both of us, but I'm always happy to do that. And then when a spot opens up, then I have that person already essentially queued up to fit into that spot. So I'm really, really loving working with people in this time in history. I think it's just a really great time to take stock and move forward powerfully.
Yeah, I've been noticing that too. People seem very motivated to turn their focus inward and to do some
Yeah.
deeper work, which is lovely.
Yes, it is. Super cool.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I asked about your coaching practice is because when you answered the question about how do you motivate people, it was very individualistic. So
Mm.
we don't have a one size fits all kind of answer to that question.
Right, right. Yeah. And that's cool too. The fact that it's unique for everybody. And you've got to do the experiments to figure out your personal equation where your needs are met, your values are honored, it's accessible. It's super fun. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Sherlock Holmes, and I keep getting this feeling with each client that, like, all right, it's a mystery, and we're going to solve this mystery, and we're going to pick up these clues along the way, and you put them together and you solve the case.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's a really cool way to look at the way you work.
It's fun.
So how do folks get a hold of you if they wanted to learn more about your work and you?
Well, the biggest information dump all at once is on my website, which is ginacaputo.com. That's GINACAPUTO.com, Gina Caputo. And you can get information on all the things that we've talked about there. And then from there, you can always reach out to me via email. I'm also on social media on Instagram and Facebook. I really like to use Instagram in particular, but I repost things on Facebook to just share, like, in an ongoing way, little thoughts, things that support this turning inward, like you said, and also things that support healthier living. And they're kind of like hacks and tips. I've spent a lot of time figuring out how can I take care of myself and fit it all into a day. So I love sharing those things, and I tend to do a lot of that on social media. And I send out a weekly email too. But you can access all those things from my website.
I will include a link in the show notes to your website as well.
Thank you.
So your enthusiasm is mighty contagious.
All right.
I bet you hear that a lot.
Not really, but I
No?
appreciate it.
No,
No,
well, it is.
thank you.
And those people are stupid for not saying it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, this has been really fun. I very much appreciate you coming on the show and chatting with me.
Well, I'm grateful Terry put us in touch, and I love talking to you too. And I can't wait to meet you in person someday.
That would be fun.
Yeah, it would. I can
Yeah.
tell.
Uh-oh. Well, if you think Gina would be as fun to hang out with as I do, it looks like she's made it easy to do that. All you got to do is sign up for her yoga potluck. You can learn more at ginacaputo.com. A big thank you to Gina for coming on the show, and to my amazing big sister Terry for connecting the two of us. Well, folks, that wraps it up for this season. I'll be back in the fall with a fresh batch of thought-provoking episodes. To make sure you don't miss future episodes, please subscribe to Lucid Cafe. It's the perfect way to make sure that you never miss any episodes, and it's completely free to subscribe. Thank you for listening. Until next time.